Before we begin, the ongoing genocide in Gaza has been going on for over 2 years now and shows no signs of stopping. Linked below will be the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund and the Boycott, Divestment, Sanction campaign. I will also be linking the Samir Project, which is a donation-based aid initiative led by people in Gaza if you want to donate more directly. I know it can seem hopeless in the face of everything, but every little thing we do can help. You would be surprised. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I suck at opening these. Let's jump in. Some of these movies may be released in 2024 or earlier. I have a criteria in which what counts to go onto my watch list for the year. Linked in the description will be my blog, where I will run down my watch list and honorable mentions, and I will explain my criteria. Read it if you want. Movies that weren't eligible for my list for one reason or another. Usually they were in festivals I could not attend, but may have counted for my list if they were eligible. On Becoming a Guinea Fowl is a beautifully shot exploration on family and cultural rot. Intense and really uncomfortable, with moments of grounded pathos that truly make it special. Sugarcane looks at First Nations residential schools with uncompromising grimness. Extremely relevant and hard to watch, it cuts through the systemic prejudice the world would rather you forget. No Other Land also hits you with prejudice the world would rather you forget, but in a very different way. Focusing on pre-genocide atrocities in Palestine, the West Bank in particular, it's a heavy watch framed through the friendship between an Israeli journalist and a Palestinian activist that truly gives it its bleeding heart. All We Imagine Is Light shows the reality of living as a woman in present-day India through the friendship and hardships of two women of slightly different age groups. Takes a fascinating turn, but keeps us grounded with two excellent central performances and a soulful contemplation. Okay, actual list time.
Nicht unterkriegen. Am Schluss wird die Gerechtigkeit siegen.
Ihre ganze Haltung hat uns sehr, sehr imponiert.
Surprised many to hear that Leni Riefenstahl's legacy has been reappraised and tried to separate from her work with the Nazi Party. This documentary comes to say doing so is pretty much impossible. She not only knew what they were doing, she was fond of it, and really fought tooth and nail to go against this public perception of how much she knew. Even frustratingly succeeding in some cases, because people found opponents of the Nazi lady kind of rude. Definitely a reflection that is welcomed in present day, a great use of archival footage, even private phone calls, to display a character study of a frankly pretty vile human being, manipulated to the end of her very long life. It may not offer a lot of comfort. She died peacefully at 101, but it gives invaluable insight.
There's no discharge in the war.
So what's this, Spike?
It's the causeway.
Talk us through it.
28 Days Later is a film typified by the time period it was made in, and 28 Weeks Later is an hour too long. With Boyle back in the helm 23 years later, so close, man, just so close. One wonders if we'll get a return to form of zombie apocalypse fare that reflects on our present climate. Well, we have UK isolationism, a return to tradition, and ignoring the real anguish and trauma that surrounds a major global outbreak. I'd say it hits the mark. Poncy subtextual reading aside, it's just a really strong, very tense horror film. I love the expansion of the lore of the infected. The cast are uniformly great, with newcomer Alfie Williams bringing a tour de force, matching strength with acting legend Ralph Fiennes despite his young age. I know the ending is rather naff and out of nowhere, but that climax brought me to tears in one of the most beautiful sequences I've seen all year. A stroke of humanity needed in a sea of horror. Just a gorgeous and evocative film that, hey, won an Oscar, so I'm not the only person who thinks so. I love the general stylism of it, and whether you think different species would form packs like this, the animals actually act like animals. This is an issue for movies even when they decide not to have them talk. And while you don't necessarily need to have them act like animals here, it adds an authentic feel and sense of dread. There is a massive sense of excitement for independent animation, particularly as this was made by free software Blender. I can get over some of the jankiness in the animation, as this creates a certain mood and tone that really stands out and shows what a low-budget animation can accomplish. On top of this, all this idea of solidarity from all walks of life coming in the oncoming storm. There's a lot to take in and has a beautiful and profound final shot.
911, what is the absolute
Somebody outside. Come here. Come here.
There's a certain disdain around movies that just fixate on black pain and trauma, particularly in America. So if folks skipped out on this one, I completely get it, particularly as it's a documentary, so it's a fairly difficult fucking watch. However, using body cam footage of police visits, this one gets across the raw, authentic state that prejudice has over so many communities that I feel this one stands out amongst the crowd. I don't particularly think this movie is sympathetic to Susan Lawrence. In fact, she's very clearly demonstrably awful, but due to the body footage being edited chronologically, it's a revealing portrait of a woman who pushes needless entitlement and paranoia on children simply because they're black. It's not a particular portrait I think should dominate the experience of Black America, as if I have any say being a white Irish person. In fact, I think fixating on their pain and suffering dehumanizes them in other fashions. But this is an important and revealing story in contemporary times, and one with a crushing, relentless grief. I don't think society takes messages from these stories anymore, but we need to.
Twee sekerheid. Eerste een. Iets soos dit moet my tuiste wees. Net Afrika has 'n naam. Tweede een. Ek is dood.
This one's fucking wild. It's a real journey from a disembodied perspective of Pablo Escobar's hippo. It's not an easy one to pin down. I feel it flows through various different ideas and moods like a tone poem. But probably one of the biggest ones is Colombia's legacy of colonial violence and the various factors that led them to a hippo getting murdered on their soil. This feels like a fascinating companion piece of Grand Tour, another esoteric floating film through the effect of colonialism that nearly made my best list. What gives this one the edge personally is the focus and precise mood the filmmakers wanted to evoke whilst examining how their country moves and feels. Whether it's situated on a tour bus or focused on the fisherman who discovered the hippo out in the wild, all of this is interconnected by the way colonialism has offset how the Americas have had their destiny forcibly decided. The flowing docudrama style isn't for everyone, but an absolute blast here.
Change everything.
I'll teach the baby art and Chris will change the diapers. You're giving me
A returnee to one of my lists. Andrew Ahn, the director of Pride and Prejudice inspired gay romp Fire Island. This is a remake of a 90s Ang Lee movie about a gay couple where one of them pretends to get married to a woman to hide their sexuality from their parents. This time around, instead of it being a friend who needs a green card, it's one of their roommates who's part of a lesbian couple looking for financial support for IVF. Things change. Our queers are subletting now. What makes these movies work is not only are they really accessible, but they tap into contemporary queer lifestyles and sensibilities like no other. The characters are layered and super lovable, there's fun subversions, and it's super, super funny. Definitely one of the lighter picks on this list, but it doesn't stop them from being excellently well written and performed.
Michael, you're gonna grow up and find out there's some things that your parents do that you just don't like. And somehow you're gonna have to take that and everything else that you know, and you're gonna have to become your own individual.
Speaking of lighter, let's go from bouncy domestic antics to the bleak realities of homelessness. Shot over the course of 3 years, we follow the life of a young boy as he's forced to grow up in a permanent tenancy in a rundown hotel room, the titular flop house, where his tensions with his mother run high while the mediating father is at work. One thing I appreciated is, despite the fact that this film is not exactly hiding the depressing nature of the situation, there's a sense of authenticity to this. The fly is certainly on the wall as these people just don't seem to regard the cameras at all. It's not just the dilapidated squalor that's shown to affect this kid's growth. It's absolutely everything. It's not easy to escape a fight you have with your parents when you can't leave the goddamn room, really. This also has a surprisingly sensitive depiction of addiction. Both parents are alcoholics. While I don't think it excuses how they behave, it humanizes them enough to the point where you realize the real enemy is America's absolutely fucked housing system. Potent and extremely relevant documentary filmmaking.
Your boyfriend.
Well, we have an arrangement.
How do you get a man like that?
I have an aptitude for devotion.
I love that we can have the reality of exploring your sexuality at an older age with the fantasy of doing that with someone who looks like Alexander Skarsgård. And I'm really happy I went into this one blind. Just a spellbinding experience and one of the most surprisingly layered looks at BDSM relationships I've ever seen, at least on screen. Even when it got to the point where I was worried they'd use Skarsgård's character to demonize doms, It's like, no, here's another BDSM relationship that's based on affection and respect. He just sucks. That's another thing I really love. It's a deeply complex and conflicting interpersonal dynamic that I'm happy they explored. Sometimes queer relationships can have disproportionate power dynamics like this. Ignoring the dom sub stuff, obviously. Sometimes they can be abused, but we shouldn't treat this as a one-size-fits-all reaction of how this should be handled. I get if these complexities may be a turn-off, but it's a beautiful, revealing story about self-discovery held up by two phenomenal central performances. Skarsgård is, of course, great, but it's Harry Melling that is an absolute revelation. One of my favourite performances of this year. Man, this one has become somewhat potent and relevant again, as if it never was. Focusing on Brazilian's military dictatorship, this true life story looks at the life of Eunice Paiva, a woman whose husband was forcibly disappeared, and documents her struggles to find him. This captures a reality films like this rarely capture, the seeming normalcy you can trap yourself in and the lingering tragedy of these fascistic rulings. Not much else needs to be said about Fernando Torres' impeccable performance, one of the year's best. It's a roller coaster of complex emotions she sails through with dignity and passion. But really for me, it's how this opens. The first roughly 40 minutes just lives in this family's world, and you grow so attached to them, and they're so relatable. It's just a typical, normal family, even with their political connections. Just incredibly well made, socially conscious, contemporarily provocative, and emotionally gutting.
Is this for Piper?
Oh, no. My daughter's blind.
Oh, is she here?
No, she's passed.
Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. You didn't know. It's not your fault.
How'd she die?
Piper.
She's okay. She's drowned.
This year has been a great one for horror, particularly ones that take these semblances of contemporary life and put them on their head. Weapons is the one that most people are praising. For good reasons, it's a great movie. While the premise of children going missing en masse isn't typical, this paranoia around child safety certainly is. This is a lot more mundane, looking at fostering. And oh man, does it ever make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Sally Hawkins just gives an incredible performance here, captivating in every nanosecond she's on screen, playing against type in a really intelligent way. On top of that, it's an examination of parenting and finding a sense of belonging in a cruel world that would unexpectedly tear that away from you. It's dark, it's shocking, and leaves you so utterly broken by the time the amazing final image hits. As one of the Letterboxd reviews puts it, I came here to be a scared bitch, not a sad bitch.
Perhaps I can reverse you out.
No, I'd rather you just leave.
And talk about taking a mundane premise and turning it on its head, but in a much more twisted way. This is from the director of Under the Shadow, and what was really great about that film was its ability to create a creepy and intense atmosphere in the most confined of spaces. This film takes that idea and basically doubles down on it. Most of the action takes place in a car with Rosamund Pike and Matthew Rhys playing parents going to pick their daughter up. Outside of the occasional chatting from the daughter off screen, it's mostly just the two of them, and it's one of the most richly layered and terrifying thrillers with a ghastly twist. I won't reveal what goes on in the third act, but it really made this film go from good to one of the best I've seen all year. This way this can turn on its head and just immerse you in some of the greatest avenues of horror without losing a sense of grounding is something else, with disoriented camera work and intense claustrophobic blocking. It's putting you in every parent's worst nightmare, and I was delighted to be along for the ride, whatever this says about my own disturbed brain.
You fellers must be the owners of this establishment.
That's right. And you are?
Name's Remick. This here's Joan and Bert.
It's that yellow, right?
Oh, and you. Must be that voice I heard from out here.
Man, I'm sure nobody was expecting this to appear on a best list of 2025. I'm sure most people are surprised it's at number 9, which... Look, man, I've seen over 170 films that are eligible for this list. The ranking at this point is almost arbitrary. Just an insanely cool, slickly made, and deliriously engaging Southern Gothic tale with such a vibrant and three-dimensional cast. Not only does this film live in the prejudices of the era that shaped these characters, Every one of them feels dynamic and like they have their own stories to tell. It's moody, it's incredible looking, it's got a killer soundtrack. And then vampires enter the film and it just gets fucking better. I've been waiting for Ryan Coogler to make an original film for a while now. Don't get me wrong, his studio stuff is also great. And he just went into this space swinging. Not only telling a tale about the lingering effects of white supremacy and colonialism, but offsetting that with emphasizing black excellence and the rippling influence of their culture, shown in easily one of the best sequences of the entire year. It's fun. It's clever. It's everything you could want from a filmmaker you love, striking out there and proving their shit. Now on to movies better than Sinners. I'm kidding, this is a personal preference, calm down.
Don't pop him. You look like you're gonna pop him.
I really got into I Think You Should Leave last year and finally exposed myself to Tim Robinson's distinctive awkward humour, as well as understand every meme that has come across my eyes in the last 3 to 4 years. Given how much of his comedy works because of the sketches, I never thought I'd not only get a movie that feels like an extended version of one of them, but it wasn't written or directed by Tim or his crew on the show. It just gets what makes him work, and I fucking love the results. Paul Rudd also had a good year. Paul Rudd mostly had a good year, with doing great work on what I thought was a sort of like Death of the Unicorn, but he absolutely sells as kind of straight man to this absolutely bizarre guy he befriended who develops this codependent fixation on him, which as you can imagine escalates. What works about these awkward situational comedies, sitcoms if you will, is the escalation and the tone being so pitch black. It really leans into some fucked up shit while remaining really fucking funny. It's such a fascinating reflection on contemporary isolation and broken social strata, with one of the best pairings of this year.
Would you please? Would you please?
Yes, ma'am.
I came all this way.
I will never shut the fuck up about how Nickel Boyce is shot. Ramel Ross and Joe Frey really tapped into something that could be written off as gimmicky, telling an entire story from the first person perspective of two boys, but gave it a life and dimension not only with dynamic and clever camera work, editing and blocking, but also talking about reformatory schools during the Jim Crow era. Again, another film about black pain, but one sadly that feels all irrelevant. There's a moment that really took me off guard and made me feel silly about the fact that a lot of this institutionalized racism depicted was done in living memory. It's probably not a reminder for those who continue to live in these dimensions long after the civil rights movement, but really gets across a sense of humanity and empathy this film allows you to just live in. This profound story of friendship, persecution, and quiet retribution. Tough watching, but utterly mesmerizing.
This is my neighborhood. No one live here or there or there. There's no one.
Exiled Iranian filmmaker Sepidi Farsi befriends Palestinian photojournalist Fatima Hassouna around the start of the Gaza genocide. This is shot through Farsi filming their video calls via her phone, so it's completely stripped bare production-wise. It's roughly over a year of these calls being shot from a separate camera. What this results in is some of the most absorbing and gripping documentary filmmaking I've seen all year, and also the most devastating. Watching Asuna's spirit get completely stripped from her at 24, starting with this bright, positive way, but eventually, after everything happens around her, her face looks gaunt and her eyes seem distant. I recall this perfectly in two quotes that evoke this. I won't spoil them here, but one is in their first phone conversation and the other is related to the Shawshank Redemption. I particularly like Farsi relaying her experience with her own home country and this kinship with another Middle Eastern woman in this oppressive and terrifying situation, though with wildly different contexts. It may be hard not to know some details of Hosanna's life before you get into this, but if you can go in blind, it is recommended. Just one of the most effective and brutal examples of the genocide from a very human place.
Just stay there, okay? Just hold on.
What is it? Are we gonna die? Is the house gonna fall on top of us? Mommy!
This is a thriller where nothing in particular is out of the ordinary. It's a woman with a stable job. She seems not rich, but relatively well off, even with the accident in her apartment that leaves it inhospitable. Nothing really affecting her day-to-day in any major way, except for one particularly important detail. She's a parent by herself trying to deal with a sick child. and it is absolutely fucking terrifying. All the credit to Rose Byrne's immaculate, incredible performance. But I also got to give credit as well to being a film about parent struggle of a disabled or invalid child, where it's not demonizing the child, the disabled or invalid person. We don't see her physically on screen, but it becomes very obvious the issues or the various failings of society around her ruining her life, rather than her because she's like 6. But she unfairly projects her anger and frustration onto her daughter. This movie is brave enough to make the lead unlikable in places, and this is offset with excellent shot composition and the score really making everything feel like a never-ending nightmare. One of the best character dramas of the year.
Just gonna leave it?
If your girlfriend, you clean it up.
Good year for mothers absolutely losing their fucking minds, huh? Again, the ranking of these is incredibly arbitrary. I guess I prefer the direction in this because, man, Lynn Ramsey, just an impeccably made film, texturally dense, and led by some career best work from Jennifer Lawrence. Easily her best performance since Winter's Bone. There's a primal rage in this that feels almost in tune with nature, like our lead is calling back to it. I love her interactions with the family she married into. They feel so layered and fulfilling, yet they seem to be what's holding her back from her true form, even one that may cause her harm. Ramsey's got an adept understanding of the way trauma and violence can forge in us beasts that we can barely understand. And seeing it played out on someone trying to live in domestic bliss is both tragic and absorbing in a way that's best seen to be discovered. Love this one, just a viscerally raw experience.
ასე ახსნას აზრი არ აქვს. ამ ახალგაზრდამ პოლიცია ჩართო საქმეში. გამოძიება ჩატარდება და ყველაფერს დაადგეს.
აქ რომ მოვიყვანე იყო კარგად, მე რა მოხდა?
მე ყველაფერი გავაკეთე, რაც შემეძლო.
It's always welcome to get a perspective of pregnancy terminations from a country that has a complicated, mostly negative relationship around them. We get an exploration of a woman simply doing her job and getting reprimanded for this, and what it ultimately puts her through. The cinematography is stark. The lighting is aggressively muted. It's a dull, ceaselessly cruel setting that puts these women's identities under constant scrutiny. And we get one person trying to fight it, and these oppressive cultural roles eat at her in a pretty stark image. This is the second feature of Georgian filmmaker Dia Kolombegashvili. I am so sorry. I tried. Her debut, appropriately titled Beginning, also dealt with heavy social themes and oppressive cinematography to communicate them. But this, I feel, takes it to an entirely different level. The way we feel this woman's conditioned to accept she's done something wrong before the hearing even takes place, and this inevitably hangs over her as you truly begin to see her crack. It's really difficult to watch, but it's so compelling. Beautifully shot and even more powerful in theme and emotional resonance. This is one of the standout films I didn't expect to grab me as much as it did.
Hey, man, I got the coordinates. It's Old Mission Road, the Craw Creek, and then the Chupacabra Hills.
Man, Paul Thomas Anderson just kind of made all my wishes come true at once. An incredibly political comedy thriller that feels super relevant, filled with morally ambiguous but memorable characters with incredibly tensely shot sequences and a jaded yet ultimately hopeful tone. You didn't have to do this much for me, man. I didn't give you anything back. I could gush for hours about this. How great the acting is, from Leo to Benicio to Tiana, to how absolutely bonkers Sean Penn is. Just one of the best villains of the year. To a fantastic star-making performance from Chase Infinity. Johnny Greenwood's pulsating score, how marvelously, intelligently stupid the Christmas Adventure Club shit is. Honestly, the general intense contempt this movie has for law enforcement and the military. But honestly, this movie just movied so fucking hard. The car chases are some of the best I have ever watched. Just one of the strongest in PTA's library, which is always hard to call because he just keeps coming out with bangers, but not banger enough to make my number one spot. Lucille Hadjitavilovic is one of my favourite underrated filmmakers. Came from roughly the same class of French extremity that her partner Gaspar Noé did, but her movies are a lot quieter and methodical, and in some ways more disturbing, particularly in her interest in the various ways children suffer in this world. We get the same thing in this quasi-inspired by the Snow Queen story. This is even mostly set in a film adaptation of that story, and it is without question the most intense and transfixing cinematic experience I have gone through all year. Credit to the always amazing Marion Cotillard, capturing a presence that's awful but you can't pull away from. However, it is Clara Piccini who truly steals this show, as this determined yet utterly lost teenager tries to forge a life for herself. Stark coldness is a theme in many ways, told through this film's production and lighting, but it's the inhospitable way our lead is thrust into this adult world she thinks she can find a home in, but learns even a gesture of kindness can very quickly be warped. Dazzling, slow burning pun, yet impossible not to take your eyes off it. It stands as my favourite film of 2025.